What's up, guys? Josh Lau here with the Card Guys, and with me today, I have Mr. Nathan Crawford and William Bradshaw. Today, we are going to be running through a Nats tier list, but we're going to be doing this a little bit differently because this is the second time we're doing this. We actually recorded 2 whole hours and it was lost, so we're going to give you the TLDR version. Um, as you can see, we've already made the chart, so there's that's very helpful. I'll quickly explain how we came to these conclusions, or I guess let's talk about the categories. So we have the hero, we have the tier, we have S to D. To make Carol happy, we only have 3 heroes in S. Strength, we rated this 0 to 100, so this is talking about the raw card power, the equipment suite, and the consistency of the deck, as well as how it matches up into the metagame. This is our predicted meta share at Nats, so these are percentages, even though they're not percentages. There. No, okay, let's not do that. Okay, let's just keep it like that.
Their
right.
percentages,
yeah,
you know it,
yep.
we know it.
Yep. And so this is what we expect to see early in Nats. So the US Nats is the first one going, but there's going to be several more weeks of Nats. And so as people get access to cards, the metagame settles in a little bit. We expect it to shift more towards this column here. So Pro Tour 5 is going to be basically the exact same metagame, except with the release of the Bolton Armory deck. So a lot of the metagame changes are going to come through the rise and fall of different heroes. And we're going to basically today, we're just going to be talking about these 8 heroes predominantly. We'll quickly touch on some in the B and C tier. But as for the D tiers, we're not really going to talk about them. All right. Let's break this down again for the people at home. Let's start with Zen. So Zen, we ranked him as alongside Enigma as the strongest decks. Something you're going to notice is that the MST heroes are very, very strong, and it's a complex set, and they're having a large metagame impact. So there's a lot to talk about here. Nathan, you are the resident ninja player on the team, I guess. You and Seb, but Seb's not here. Tell me a little bit about Zen. Why did we rank him so high, and why do we think his meta share is going to be like we posted here?
So I think a lot of people probably are walking into Nats thinking that Zen will be 20% of the room. I don't think it'll be that exaggerated because there's a lot of data points that would indicate that there will be a lot of new. And I don't think Victor's going away particularly. I mean, I think there'll be less, but I think Guardian players need something to play, and it's going to be very difficult to break that habit. So there are some decks that are going to give him some trouble, right? And I think that's going to keep some people off of him and keep him more to a controllable, like 13% of the field or so. But he's the one that's had the most hype revolve around him. People have talked about him the most. People are kind of expecting.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about Enigma. So Enigma we placed very, very high as well. This is the deck that won the PTI event in Montreal. Also had some decent success around the world as well. Typically, probably built with the Cosmos as the weapon of choice. I think there was some people that were playing around with Iris, but I think the value that you can extract from the Cosmos, discounting the Spectral Shields is just really, really good. Enigma has a lot of ways to outplay and snowball the game, and it's kind of like, you must be this tall to ride the ride type of hero. If you don't have a solid damage output, you don't have the ability to go wide, it's going to be very, very difficult to deal with Enigma. Talk to me a little bit about this hero.
Well, I love what you just said. The you have to be this tall to ride. That is so aptly put. Like Enigma is the definition of like you must be this good at this, otherwise, you might as well not even fight her. You could just walk away from the table and get the same result.
In our original 2-hour video, Nathan, you mentioned that the matchup spread for Enigma from the opponent's side is not good, but from Enigma side, it is good. I thought that was a very, very important point that I think we need to repeat.
Yeah, so historically, Illusionist has had a polarized matchup spread on both ends, both people playing into it and it playing into other people. Whereas Enigma, I believe, kind of breaks that mold because I think she is actually pretty okay running into aggro decks where because she can block and protect her quote unquote dragons, right? Whereas Dromai just didn't have that liberty, right? And so, but at the same time, like you guys said, if you don't produce, the example I gave in the video was like, you deal 12 damage a turn, right? Or 13, 14 in Classic Constructed, right? And she can probably block 13 to 14 with all the D-reacts. Every time you fall behind, ward gets put on the board. And so if you dealt 11 and she dropped 3 ward, now you have to deal 17 before you clear, and not counting breakpoints. There's a lot of math that goes into it. It's not that simple, but it can snowball, right? The second you kind of slip a little bit, she can just run away with the game and establish board presence and establish more ward to protect the more valuable ward.
Yep.
Well, I think back to the matchups with older Prism that were dependent on the aura game plan, where the heralds just weren't working. And you literally had to do all auras. Sometimes you wouldn't draw your auras. You draw nothing but heralds against a Starvo or a Bravo, and it's like that's not good. And Bravo less so because you'd still get there, but Enigma doesn't have that issue. Like her deck is built so cohesively and towards such a similar game plan across the board that she's always going to get the job done, especially if you give her some wiggle room. So she's just very good at what she's doing.
She does have a few matchups that are a little bit poor. Zen, Phi, Riptide is very annoying because Riptide can deal damage on the opponent's turn. But overall has a very, very strong matchup spread. This is one of the heroes that has given me the largest headache as a warrior player. Traditionally, we have always been very bad into Illusionist, and Enigma is actually like even worse than OG Prism. So this has kind of been a headache for me. All right, next up we have Aelia. We ranked Aelia very, very highly. This is the traditional pump, 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 send something dominated if you can across the line. Disrupt with red in the ledger, inertia tokens, and offense is the best defense. Will, you've played the most Aelia here by far. Tell me about your thoughts on the hero and its position in the metagame.
I think Aelia is in a great position. There's some things that are annoying, like Illusionist, particularly Prism, and Enigma too, for that matter. Zen is, so explosive and good that if you fire a drill shot at him, he's just going to explode and ruin your day. But aside from that, Aelia, just like you said, with access to things like Red in the Ledger, Dominate, stapled with a Seek and Destroy or an Inertia, that's just some of the most broken stuff you can do in this game. It stops your opponent dead in their tracks and says they don't get to set up. And that's just what other axis can you play on? So it's just incredibly strong. She's got a good enough spread. Even the matchups that are bad are still fine. So I'm very happy with Aelia. I think she's a great pick going into the weekend.
Both Rangers also have access to Murkmire Grapple, which is a pretty important card against Enigma.
Absolutely.
Although Enigmas are generally built very, very defensively, so you do kind of have to line it up such that it, they basically don't have a unmovable in Arsenal. But yeah. Okay, next up, we have Kano. This might surprise some people why we place Kano so highly. But Kano has always been pretty good. The Kindle card helps him race. There's still the ability to pitch stack if you want to for second cycle, and there are certain matchups where you're going to need to do that. But Kano had a lot of sideboard slots, and so they could add things like Kindle and what was that card that deals with auras?
Scour.
Scour.
Which
Yeah,
is
they
great.
have
Love that
Scour as
card.
well. So Kanos basically can adapt to this metagame pretty well. They have the speed and exponential damage. So I think it's in a pretty good spot Any thoughts on Kano?
I think he's good. Tendering foresight as well. Just I think that there's only a few matchups that you truly now with all the amp effects you really truly have to stack. So I think that lesser experienced Kanos can just walk into Nat season and YOLO it, and
Mhm.
it actually pay off.
Sure.
And I think the very experienced Kanos, I have Enigmas tell me that they're scared of good Kanos, and that blows my mind. So if Kano's doing well into that, his other good matchups are plenty good
Mhm.
beside it. So Kano's looking pretty okay.
Yep. Okay. Let's keep running through the heroes, and then I want to talk about the differences between this column E and column F. Um, okay, so let's talk about new. So this is the most played deck on Talishar. This is Nathan in the video that we did yesterday. You talked about how TCG player has never let you down. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I like to track majestic cards, especially when it involves heroes in a new set specifically, to kind of gauge the interest of. This doesn't really work at like a Pro Tour or Worlds level because there's a lot fewer players, but anytime you have a season where it's kind of like open invitational, which I kind of consider Nats. I know you have to have an invite, but there's just a lot of invites that went out. So the fact that Just a Nick is a $10 card and Manifestations of Mirror Guys a $3 card kind of should tell you that, hey, I think there's a lot of people interested in playing new. Are all of those people going to be at Nats? Of course not. That's like not the correct way to look at it. But it's a staple that's going to go in both of the decks. Every single competitive deck of both those here will contain those cards. So why is one 3x the price? We could have a surgical extraction situation at a lesser extent. I doubt it, but I think people are just buying the card more. Simple as that, which should translate to people playing it more.
Mm-hmm. This is a deck that has quite a bit of counterplay into some of the more popular matchups, like against Zen and Aelia. Assassin traditionally, like Azuri, has always been, very, very annoying for Aelia to deal with. Zen does want to keep a large hand, so being disrupted by new is very, very annoying. Plus, the triangle from draft kind of carries over to CC to some degree. Okay, next up we have both of the brutes, and we put them pretty close together. I think we could kind of talk about them, together. So KO may not be the strongest deck in the format, but a lot of people that qualified for Nats qualified on KO. If you remember that giant pie chart that they made, I think a third, 25 to a third, 33% were qualified through KO. KO got a ton of Living Legend points in the Heavy Hitters season, and with the KO Armory deck coming out, he just got better. The reason we put KO above Levia is that Levia has a little bit of consistency issues. And she does have the one of the few negative hero abilities in the game. She does need things to line up properly for her. But we think both of them are in a strong position. They both have great equipment. They also have pretty explosive turns. They have just a solid kit overall. And I think they'll be moderately popular. Any thoughts on the brutes?
I think KO is still a fighter. Still got some grit that he's going to come out on the field with and kick some butt with. Now, I think a good Zen player is going to give him a very good run for his money. But Scowling Fleshbag is a card, and so is Savage Sash. Like KO can do some very explosive, very impressive things. So I won't be surprised if I get my butt kicked by a KO in the first round of CC. But I think Levia is actually the brute that I'm expecting to do a little bit better overall.
It is harder to pilot as well, so the people that are presenting Levia, you're like, oh, okay, you're pretty serious. You played this for quite a while. Kind of similar to Aelia and Kano. Like when you see people presenting those heroes, you're like, oh, This hero's been good for a while, but it hasn't LL'd. Okay, you probably have played this hero for quite a while. So, okay, so some 2 heroes to watch out for.
Maybe not Aelia anymore, but you know.
Yeah, now it's like a bit of a hype train. People are just jumping on because it's that good.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. That in the past when you saw it as Aelia, you were like, "Oh, holy
No,
crap!"
for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. But ever since
God, it used to be
Lexi
a cool thing, like a
LL'd,
badge of honor.
yeah, it's yeah. All right. The final hero that we have in A tier is Prism. So this is a hero that did pretty well in the heavy hitters season. We did see, this hero go pretty far, make multiple top 8s. The deck is fairly complicated to play against, but it does have a pretty decent Zen matchup. It's a little iffy against Enigma because, like Nathan pointed out, you could defend your dragons as Enigma. And, Prism isn't, I guess this is like the hero that if you sit across from it, you're like, okay, this person probably has hundreds of games on this hero. You don't take Prism, a hero this complicated with this much intricacies, to a tier 3 event unless you really know what you're doing. How do we talk me through a little bit more about why we put Prism in A tier?
Well, Prism is just a fundamentally very strong and very good hero. The things she's doing, the things that she can do are very different and very strong, and she gets to play with a lot of different options. And
Yes.
nothing like options in the game of Flesh and Blood.
Having the ability
all
to
the different figments are doing crazy things.
having the ability to play Herald aggro with Empyrean Rapture, or it's going for a little bit more of a combo, spit out multiple auras onto the board with the Halo plus Vestige combo, is, that gives a little bit of ambiguity to what you're playing. Also,
Absolutely.
the deck also can snowball off the correct hands. Anytime you drop 2 auras on the board, that it's very, very difficult for heroes without good action economy to clear that. And even if you have good action economy, like let's say Brute has some decent action economy, they still probably have to roll stabs for that. And we've even seen, like we just talked about Levia, we've seen her kind of shift towards a more consistent style with the who's the Shadow Beast. So, yeah, Prism I think is a pretty strong hero, and it requires a lot of reps into, and I think people may not be getting as many reps into this hero recently because everybody's been playing Zen, Enigma, and New, so they're anybody that's been practicing probably has less than 10 games against Prism, which is going to be which is an issue. Because that hero, like if you make a mistake early in the game, that could snowball. Very, very similar to Enigma. Okay.
On that,
yeah.
Just a quick note, but like you said, Enigma, that's the one thing that truly is holding her back. That matchup is not a cakewalk.
Sure. Okay. We've been going for about 20 minutes now, so let's just quickly look at the B and C tiers. Are there any heroes here that you want to chit chat about? I guess we should talk about Riptide and Victor. I think these are. So we've seen that Rangers in general have been having a very, very solid win rate, and part of that is they have access to very raw, like powerful raw cards like Codex of Frailty, but they also have access to some things that are very, very annoying in this current metagame. So Riptide has the ability to deal damage on the opponent's turn, and they both have access to such and such cannot be prevented, or damage cannot be prevented. And yeah, although Riptide doesn't have quite the level of disruption that Aelia does, still has some disruption, so can kind of trip up Zen and Kano, and obviously has a bunch of D-reacts to deal with New. So I think Riptide's in a decent position right now. But I think, if I recall correctly, Nathan, you were more high on Riptide, and now you're like a little bit lower on Riptide.
Yeah, on my tier list, I put him in A, and that was predicated on his matchup specifically into Zen. I said I think he's an A tier hero if he is like factually just favored into Zen, and I just don't think that to be true. Mainly because collapsing trap, you don't actually extract the value that you should because you have, ways to generate tigers into hand. So a lot of the cases, like it's not actually a negative card in any way. It's just a new hand. And all the cards kind of work with each other. You can brick, but I've also played it and just made their hand better. So it really just depends. And that was like your key, right? Like anytime you played against Fi, you kind of drug the game out till you got a collapsing trap and you blew them out. You don't have that opportunity against Zen. So because Riptide is not favored into Zen, under my belief, your Enigma matchup is great, but you're like 50-50 into Aelia. You auto lose to Kano. Nu's fine. KO's okay. And then Prism gets really dicey really quick because your traps don't trigger on the angels. So I thought baiting Zen was the reason to play it, but it turned out that was not the case. I don't think he's bad by any means. I wouldn't even fight anybody if they wanted to put him at the bottom of A, but just I was really looking for him having a favorable Zen matchup.
Okay. Next up, we have Victor. This is a hero that I think is going to have a wide or a high representation at Nats, but throughout the season, I think we're going to see it taper off a little bit. Mainly because, similar to KO, this was one of the best decks in the previous format. Heavy hitters, a lot of people qualified for Nats on Victor. There are a lot of Starvo, Oldhim refugees that still need their Guardian fix. And Bravo and Betsy just don't cut it. So Victor it is for a lot of them. And the main reason we have Victor in B is it has a rough matchup against pretty much everything above him. Zen has burst damage. Enigma has board state. Aelia is fine for Victor. But he doesn't have D-Reacts. That's the issue. Yeah. He doesn't have D-Reacts. Never mind. He's a different Guardian, yeah.
I wouldn't say it's rough, but it's like it's not what you want it to be.
Yeah,
I don't want to see
Bravo.
I'm not going to cry.
Yeah. Kano, you just generally get stacked and they kill you. New, you're a Guardian. Like, what more can I say? KO, you don't win your clashes and they have higher damage output. Lavaya, you don't win your clashes and they have burst damage. Prism is an illusionist. Like, you're basically, if you're playing Victor, the reason you're playing Victor is to beat up everything down here. You're great into everything down here.
Oh yeah.
But the issue is that you struggle against everything above you. So yeah, it's yeah. Let's just say by the time Pro Tour rolls around, we think that his meta share will be probably halved of what it is at Nats. Maybe
unless
more.
People solve something. I'm hearing rumors about him.
Yes, gold. Visit the Gold Main Estate is a good card. It is very oppressive against decks that cannot win clashes against you. If you start with the helmet plus the shield, you win the first one that you play is already 3 value. The second one you play is 4 value. So it can get out of control very, very quickly. And then that stack of gold at the end of the game helps you push Golden Sun at the end of the game. But is that enough to compete with the new MST heroes and the upgrades that the heroes got in the armory deck plus the expansion slot? My gut says no. Mainly because Enigma's gonna run circles around you. All the S tier heroes are going to run circles around you, and that's the main issue. Okay, I think we should talk very briefly about Warrior because, I mean,
why not?
Why not? So the Warrior situation is not very good. If you are bringing Warrior to Nats, I frankly don't recommend it. But I'm not going to listen to my own advice. I'm actually going to bring Dory. So, you know, it is what it is. If you're playing any deck, it should be Hatchet's Dory, Dawnblade Dory, or Raiden Bolton with a very small sideboard package of sabers. That's my recommendation. The reason why, I'll talk very briefly why there's an issue with Dorinthia at the moment. And the issue is that you could build, if you build a Dawnblade deck, you're good into certain things, bad into certain things. If you build a Hatchet deck, you're good into certain things, bad into certain things. There's no way to deal with everything up here in a clean 80. And basically you're playing gem roulette with Warrior at the moment. If you run into Zen as Dawnblade and you get lucky, sure. Dawnblade Dory could beat Lexi back in the day, but you had to get very lucky.
Right.
You know, Enigma is going to absolutely dumpster both of the styles. Aelia, if you're playing like very defensive hatchets, is okay. But if you're playing very defensive hatchets, then you suck against Kano. If you're playing Dawnblade, you suck against New. If you play hatchets, you're fine against New. If you play hatchets against the TLDR, you can't build an 80 that works with everything. So you just have to build a deck and hope that Gem pairs you up nicely. Okay. Is there any decks in C&D we want to briefly talk about?
Well, I was going to say we can wax poetic about a lot of these heroes, but I think the nitty gritty short of it is just, if you feel comfortable on one of these heroes more so than anything we've placed higher, then play that because you're probably going to do better. But if you have other options, I think these heroes are all in a bit of a bad spot, and you might not be making the best choice if you bring one. Prove me wrong. I'd love to see it, but it seems a little tricky.
There are two heroes I kind of want to point out. Reinhardt and Vincent. They both have very, very silver bullety abilities. So Reinhardt, I told this story that Reinhardt has the ability to make the opponents act first with Barraging Beatdown. You play Barraging Beatdown, you say any response. And that's a very, very uncomfortable position for heroes like Enigma because they're in 99% of situations, they're the one that gets to act second. But Reinhardt has the ability to force them to act now or never. Vincent, you have the ability to come in with unpreventable damage. However, we talked about how Enigma just basically changes their playstyle and basically fatigues you. So that's not really a solution either. But I think these two are, you know, decks that I think some people will take because they think, oh, I have a great matchup into Enigma. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the differences between our Nats and PT5. So generally, Nats is a little bit more wide open. Pro Tour World Championship, a little bit more consolidated. So we see a consolidation to the top in general, but there are also some heroes that we have taking a little bit of a dip. So we have, I guess Victor is kind of the prime example. We also have KO taking a little bit of a dip. So as people transition from the old guard towards, you know, some of the newer heroes, the way that all these add up, basically we expect the metagame at Nats to be 50% new shiny toys, the new heroes, and then 40% heavy hitters, old guard, you know, heroes like KO, Victor, etc., Aelia. And then 10% of people are just going to be playing what they want to be playing. At Pro Tour, we expect that to basically kind of shift up to SNA. Is there any, you guys have any thoughts on that?
I'm expecting Enigma to turn up big for Pro Tour, just because I think that I think she has the most room to kind of like make a lot of progress on. I know Noah's list is like a really good starting place, but I do think there's a lot of like changes that can be made to like just tailor your matchups, not necessarily to make like an all-around better deck, but like just you want to be better into this. I don't know if Enigma, other than Zen, has like a strict target yet. And one thing that we can't forecast is like certain heroes have an aspect to them to where they have the ability to target heroes more. Like, as an example, Zen can't really target, right? He's just doing his thing. He's trying to deal damage, right? But like Azuri can swap which 2 for 6s she's running in her deck. She can take out Amnesia, put in the weakest link, or vice versa. You know, like certain heroes have a natural package to target said heroes. Illusionist being probably the best example of that because they could just completely play their or change their playstyle. So certain heroes have the ability to adapt, and after the first 2 weeks of nationals, we'll see those heroes that have that ability really come forward, and that's where we'll see the real deck building come in.
Great point.
Okay. Okay, I think that kind of wraps things up. So if you are going to Nats, come up and say hi to the chart guys, the card guys. Us three and Sebastian will be at Nats. If you come up and say hi to me, I will give you a cutie Dory sleeve. So there's that. Quick shout out to our
If you
sponsors.
come up and say hi to me, I'll give you a crisp new $1 bill.
Okay, we will
You're
do
gonna run
that.
out of money.
I shouldn't have said that. I
Yeah.
take that back.
Yeah. How many dollar bills are you gonna be bringing? Okay, so that'll be a good gauge for how many people watch our videos. Will it's worth the money you're gonna bleed out,
or if they stay this late.
yeah.
I'm bringing 50 singles. After that, you guys are screwed.
Yeah. All right. Quick shout out to the sponsors here at the Card Guys. Thank you to Dragon Shield, Fabric.gg, and Magnolia Games. You guys help make everything that we do here possible. Yeah, this has been kind of an experiment for us, kind of doing a shorter tier list video. I mean, when we originally recorded it, it was over 2 hours. We talked about all 27 heroes.
Yeah.
But it kind of dragged on for a little bit too long. So let us know in the comments if you prefer these like kind of shorter videos that are more focused on the top level heroes, or do you really want the whole give us the 2 hour podcast stuff. type of thing. Let us know. All right. This has been Josh Lau with the Card Guys with Nathan and Will. We'll see you guys later.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.